First contact gone wrong. The Concordiat battlecruiser Inevitable Justice hung in the darkness of deep space, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. High Admiral Zextal stood on the command deck, all six of his eyes fixed on the holographic displays surrounding his command podium. His species, the Arxen, had led the Concordiat for over 3,000 cycles, guiding lesser civilizations into their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Unknown vessel detected at the edge of the Helios sector, announced First Sensor Officer Cry. Configuration doesn't match any known species in our database. Zextal's primary heart quickened with anticipation. A new species to enlighten, or subjugate, if they proved stubborn. "Show me," he commanded. The hologram shifted to display a vessel that made several of his junior officers emit clicks of derision. The ship was barely half the length of the Inevitable Justice, with none of the elegant crystalline architecture that marked advanced spacefaring races. Instead, its hull was a pragmatic combination of armored plates and utilitarian structures. Primitive reaction drives were visible at its stern, and its weapon systems appeared to be little more than basic particle accelerators. "Life signs?" Zextal inquired, already calculating how quickly this species would submit once they witnessed true technological superiority. "Approximately 300 organic signatures," Cry reported. "Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere inside. Thermal patterns suggest mammalian biology. They're broadcasting," Communications Officer Vex announced. "Simple electromagnetic waves. Translators are processing now." A voice filled the command deck, speaking in perfectly translated Concordiat Standard. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Frontier. We come in peace and seek diplomatic contact with new civilizations." Zextal's mandibles clicked in amusement. They still used verbal communication rather than direct neural interfaces. Charming in a primitive sort of way. "Return broadcast," he ordered. "Inform them of their obligation to submit to Concordiat authority and prepare for technological uplift." The human ship's response was prompt. "With respect, Admiral, we do not recognize any obligation to submit to external authority. We are willing to engage in diplomatic discussions as equals." Equals. Zextal's secondary heart nearly stopped at the audacity. "Scan their technological level. Energy signatures indicate Grade 3 civilization at best," Cry reported. "Their drive system operates on basic fusion principles. Weapons appear to be magnetic acceleration-based. Defensive systems show simple electromagnetic shielding. They're barely past their first interstellar steps," Zextal mused. "Yet they speak of equality." He raised his primary manipulator, triggering the ship's automated protocols. "Deploy the compliance field. Standard subjugation pattern." The Inevitable Justice released a wave of crystalline drones, their faceted surfaces gleaming as they surrounded the human vessel. These devices had pacified countless species before, using quantum field manipulation to disable primitive technology and force submission. "Compliance field at full strength," Cry announced. "Impact in 3, 2, 1. The field struck the Frontier's hull, and nothing happened. "Impossible," Cry chittered, his sensory stalks writhing in confusion. "The field, it's being absorbed somehow." "No, more than absorbed. It's being redirected." Before Zextal could process this impossibility, the human ship's primitive hull began to shift. Panels slid apart, revealing sophisticated weapon ports that bore no resemblance to the simple accelerators their scans had detected. The reaction drives shimmered and vanished, revealed as mere projections concealing something far more advanced. "This is Captain Chen again." The human's voice carried an edge of steel now. "Perhaps we should restart this conversation. You see, Admiral, humanity learned long ago that appearing less advanced than we are tends to reveal the true nature of those we meet. Your response has been informative." Zextal's all six eyes widened as new sensor data flooded his displays. The ship's true power signatures were off the charts. Its hull composition defied analysis. And its weapons, His primary heart nearly stopped as he realized what they'd done. They'd been scanning our defensive systems this entire time, Cry reported, his voice shaking. Using our own compliance field as a carrier wave. They know everything about our capabilities now. Quite right, Captain Chen confirmed, having apparently heard every word. Now shall we discuss diplomacy? As equals? Or would you prefer a demonstration of why humanity has survived every attempt at conquest in our history? The command deck fell silent as Zextal faced the first real crisis of his long career. In trying to subjugate what he perceived as a primitive species, he had instead discovered something far more dangerous, a civilization that had learned to hide its true nature, to appear weak until the perfect moment to reveal its strength. Looking at the now transformed human vessel, Zextal realized that everything he thought he knew about technological progression might be wrong. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrifying question formed. If this was just one human ship, what else might humanity be hiding? The hidden edge. Admiral Zextal's command staff watched in stunned silence as the UES Frontier continued its transformation. What had appeared to be a crude vessel of bolted metal plates now rippled with technology that defied their understanding. The ship's surface had become a shifting matrix of nanoscale machines, each one capable of adapting its properties in real time. Full analysis of their defensive capabilities, Zextal ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. Impossible to complete, Admiral. Cry responded, his sensor stalks twitching frantically. Their systems keep changing. Every time we isolate a pattern, it shifts. It's like they've developed technology that evolves during combat. On the bridge of the Frontier, Captain Sarah Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Concordia's scanning attempts were providing valuable data about their technological assumptions and limitations. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, her tactical officer, worked her console with practiced efficiency. They're still trying to classify us according to their technological hierarchy, Rodriguez reported. Their systems can't process the idea that we've developed along a completely different path than they expected. Chen nodded. Humanity learned long ago that bigger isn't always better. While the Concordiat focused on building massive ships with brute force technology, we perfected adaptability and efficiency. The Frontier's hull continued its metamorphosis, each transformation revealing new layers of sophistication. What the Concordiat had dismissed as primitive reaction drives were actually quantum field manipulators, disguised to appear less advanced. The simple particle weapons were in fact highly sophisticated energy systems that could reconfigure themselves for maximum effectiveness against any target. Admiral, Vex called out from his communication station. We're detecting transmissions from the human vessel to somewhere else, but there's nothing on our long-range scanners. Zextal's spine ridges bristled. Impossible. There are no other ships within 50 light years. Actually, Captain Chen's voice came through their speakers again. There are. You just can't see them. Would you like to meet the rest of our patrol group? Space rippled around the Frontier as 3 more human vessels shed their cloaking fields. Each one was different in design from the others, yet they moved with perfect coordination. The Concordiat's sensors struggled to track them as they took up flanking positions. Remarkable, Cry whispered, his professional detachment cracking. Their cloaking technology doesn't just bend light. It exists partially out of phase with normal spacetime. We couldn't detect them because they weren't entirely here. Zextal's primary heart was racing now. Everything he'd been taught about technological progression was being challenged. These humans hadn't just developed different technology. They'd conceived of possibilities his civilization had never even considered. Your civilization believes that technological advancement follows a single, predictable path, Chen observed. But humanity's history taught us otherwise. We faced extinction multiple times on our homeworld, survived countless challenges. Each crisis forced us to think differently, to find solutions where none seemed possible. The human ships began a complex dance around the inevitable justice, their movements synchronized in ways that suggested an advanced form of neural networking. Yet when Cree scanned for the expected quantum linkages, he found nothing. "They're using something else," he reported, his confusion evident. "Their ships are coordinating perfectly, but I can't detect any form of communication between them." "That's because you're looking for technology," Chen explained. "We learned long ago that the most secure network isn't built on quantum entanglement or subspace fields. It's built on human intuition, enhanced by AI systems that think the way we do, unpredictably, creatively, adaptively." As if to demonstrate this point, the human ships executed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible according to the Concordiate's understanding of physics. They moved like living things, their hulls flowing and reshaping to minimize energy expenditure in ways that made. "Perhaps," Chen suggested, her voice carrying a note of genuine curiosity, "it's time for both our species to learn from each other. You've mastered technologies we find fascinating, particularly your crystalline computing architecture, and we've clearly developed solutions that could benefit your people. The question is, can you adapt your thinking enough to accept that advancement doesn't always follow the path you expect?" Zextal looked at his command staff, seeing his own shock and uncertainty reflected in their postures. The Concordiate had always assumed that their way was the only way, that technological progress followed an inevitable trajectory. Yet here was proof that an entirely different path was possible, one that emphasized adaptation over raw power, efficiency over scale, creativity over conventional thinking. "Your offer is intriguing," he finally responded, choosing his words carefully. "But I must ask, if this is what you show us openly, what capabilities do you still keep hidden?" Chen's laugh was warm, but carried an edge of warning. "Admiral, I think you're beginning to ask the right questions. Shall we continue this discussion in a more formal diplomatic setting? I believe both our civilizations could benefit from a frank exchange of ideas, assuming, of course, that you can accept us as equals." As Zextal prepared his response, he couldn't help but wonder how many other assumptions his civilization had made about the nature of progress, and what other surprises humanity might have in store for the galaxy. Tables turned. The crystalline corridors of the inevitable justice hummed with nervous energy as the ship prepared to receive its first human visitors. Admiral Zextal had agreed to diplomatic talks, but not without taking what he considered necessary precautions. His security teams lined the diplomatic reception chamber, armed with the Concordiate's most advanced weapons. Receiving transport requests from the human vessel, Vex announced, his antennae twitching. "They're asking permission to use their own transportation method." "Denied," Zextal responded immediately. "They will use our secure transport system or not come at all. We cannot risk." His words cut off as a shimmer of light appeared in the center of the chamber. The air itself seemed to fold, and suddenly Captain Chen was standing there, along with two other humans. They had bypassed every security measure, every shield, every defense, as if they didn't exist. "My apologies for the unconventional entrance," Chen said, smiling pleasantly. "But we thought it best to demonstrate why your security precautions are unnecessary. We could have appeared anywhere on your ship, at any time. We chose to arrive here, in the open, as a show of good faith." The security team's weapons tracked the humans automatically, but Zextal noticed something odd about the targeting systems. They seemed to be having trouble maintaining a lock, as if the humans were somehow both present and not present simultaneously. "Fascinating architecture," said one of Chen's companions, a tall human with dark skin and silver-threaded hair. "Dr. Marcus Way." He introduced himself, nodding at the crystalline walls. "Your approach to quantum crystallography is quite innovative, though perhaps a bit rigid in its implementation." The third human, a younger woman with striking green eyes, was Major Elena Volkov, their security specialist. She seemed to be looking through the walls rather than at them, her eyes moving in patterns that suggested she was seeing things invisible to everyone else. "Your security systems are impressive," Volkov commented, "particularly the quantum-locked protocols in your central computer core." Very elegant, almost impossible to breach through conventional means. Zextal's primary heart skipped a beat. The computer core was buried in the center of the ship, behind layers of security that should have been impenetrable. More importantly, its very existence was classified at the highest levels. "How did you?" he began. "Your ship has been broadcasting its complete internal layout to us since our first interaction," Chen explained. "Not intentionally, of course. But your crystalline computing architecture creates distinct quantum resonance patterns. To us, it's like reading a book written in light." "Impossible," one of Zextal's science officers protested. "The quantum signatures are encrypted using a base 12 mathematical system derived from your species' natural perception of spatial dimensions." Dr. Wei completed the thought. "Elegant, but it makes assumptions about the nature of reality that we discovered were incomplete." As if to demonstrate, Wei pulled out what looked like a simple glass cube. Within it, mathematical formulas danced and shifted, flowing through dimensions that shouldn't have existed. "You see, we found that mathematics itself is far more flexible than most species assume. Your encryption is perfect, assuming reality works the way you think it does. But we learned to think sideways." The cube projected a holographic display of the inevitable justice's systems, but from a perspective that made several of Zextal's officers feel distinctly uncomfortable. It showed their ship existing in more dimensions than they could perceive, with data flowing through channels they had never known existed. "Your civilization developed technology based on what you could see and measure," Chen said gently. "We developed ours based on what we could imagine. When we reached for the stars, we didn't just ask, how do we get there? We asked, what if space itself works differently than we think? The answers we found, well, they led us down some interesting paths." Major Volkov had been silent, her eyes still tracking invisible patterns. "Captain," she said suddenly, "they're receiving a transmission from Concordia at High Command. Encrypted, coming through their quantum network." Zextal stiffened. That was supposed to be impossible. The quantum network was instantaneous, undetectable, and absolutely secure. Yet this human was somehow aware of his private communications. "They're ordering you to delay us while they assemble a battle fleet," Volkov continued, her eyes unfocused. "Estimated arrival time: 6 hours. 7 capital ships, including 3 planet crackers." Chen's expression remained diplomatic, but a hint of steel entered her voice. "Admiral, I'd strongly advise against that course of action. We've been nothing but open with you, demonstrating capabilities that we normally keep hidden. This isn't because we're showing off. It's a warning. What you've seen isn't even a fraction of what humanity can do when truly threatened." As if to emphasize her point, the holographic display shifted, showing hundreds of quantum distortions throughout nearby space. Each one could have hidden a human ship, a weapon, or something else entirely. The Concordia's most sophisticated sensors hadn't detected any of them. "We don't want conflict," Chen continued. "We genuinely believe our species could learn from each other. But if your leadership insists on viewing this as a competition rather than an opportunity, well, let's just say there's a reason humanity has survived every crisis we've ever faced." Zextal looked at the humans standing in his diplomatic chamber, really looked at them. They appeared so physically unimposing, yet they wielded power his civilization could barely comprehend. They had bypassed his every defense, read his most secure communications, and even now were probably capable of things he couldn't imagine. The quantum network chimed again, High Command demanding an immediate response. Zextal faced the most important decision of his career: follow orders and potentially start a war his people couldn't win, or take a step into an uncertain future where humanity's impossible science might reshape everything his civilization thought they knew about the universe. Chen watched him quietly, waiting to see which path he would choose. Diplomatic revolution. Admiral Zextal stood before the quantum communication array, his decision made. Around him, the crystalline walls of the inevitable justice seemed to pulse with anticipation. He could feel the weight of history in this moment, The future of his civilization balanced on the edge of a blade. "High Command," he began, his voice steady despite his racing hearts. "I must respectfully decline to follow your current orders. The situation here is far more complex than initially reported." The response was immediate and harsh. "You will comply, Admiral. The battle fleet has already launched. The human threat must be contained before." "Before what?" Captain Chen interrupted, her voice somehow coming through the supposedly secure quantum channel. "Before you discover that there are things in this universe that don't fit into your carefully ordered hierarchy." The quantum network erupted with confusion as the highest members of Concordiate leadership realized their secure channel had been compromised. Chen's voice continued, now broadcasting simultaneously through every communication system in the Concordiate fleet. "To all ships currently en route to this sector, what you're about to see is a demonstration, not an attack. Please observe carefully." Dr. Wei raised his mysterious cue, and suddenly the space around the inevitable justice transformed. The quantum distortions that had been invisible to Concordiate sensors became visible to the naked eye. Tiers in reality itself, each one containing glimpses of human ships, stations, and technologies that defied comprehension. "By your measurements, humanity should be centuries away from achieving quantum manipulation on this scale," Wei explained, his voice carrying the patience of a teacher. "But you're measuring progress along a single path, like climbing a ladder. Humanity. We built an elevator instead." Major Volkov stepped forward, her green eyes now glowing with an inner light that suggested extensive but subtle cybernetic enhancements. "Your battle fleet is currently passing through the Helios corridor. In exactly 15 seconds, they will encounter what we call probability mirror." Right on cue, reports flooded in from the approaching Concordiate ships. They had encountered something. Their sensors showed them flying through empty space, but their crews could see vast structures of light and energy surrounding them, as if reality itself had been turned inside out. "Don't be alarmed," Chen assured them. "The probability mirror simply allows you to see things as they actually are, rather than as you expect them to be. Your ships are perfectly safe. We're just helping you perceive a few more dimensions than usual." The Concordiate leaders watched in stunned silence as their mighty battle fleet was effortlessly contained within what appeared to be a bubble of altered spacetime. Their most powerful weapons couldn't penetrate it, not because it was strong, but because it existed in a way their weapons couldn't properly interact with. 300 years ago, Chen continued, humanity faced a crisis that nearly destroyed us. We discovered that our understanding of physics, of reality itself, was dangerously incomplete. So we did what humans always do. We adapted. We stopped trying to force the universe to work the way we thought it should and started listening to how it actually worked. Dr. Wei's cube projected a new series of equations, mathematical proofs that made several Concordiate scientists clutch their heads in discomfort. "Your civilization built its technology on a foundation of crystalline certainty. Beautiful, ordered, predictable. We built ours on quantum uncertainty, on the chaos that exists between possibilities. Both approaches have merit. Both have things to teach the other." Zextal watched as the human demonstrations continued, each one more impossible than the last. They weren't showing off their military might. They were offering glimpses of technologies that could revolutionize everything from medicine to space travel. Technologies that worked on principles his people had never even imagined. "The choice before you is simple," Chen said to the assembled Concordiate leadership. "You can continue to see us as a threat to be contained, in which case we'll simply remain hidden, watching as you continue along your single path of development. Or you can accept that there are other ways to progress, other paths to understanding the universe. We're offering you access to technologies that could help your people in ways you can't imagine. All we ask in return is to be treated as equals, and to have the opportunity to learn from you as well." A new voice cut through the quantum network, the supreme leader of the Concordiate himself. "You demonstrate all this power, these impossible technologies, and yet you ask to learn from us. Why?" Chen smiled, and for the first time, There was genuine warmth in her expression, because that's what humanity does best. We don't just solve problems, we learn from them. Your crystalline computing, your understanding of quantum crystallography, it's brilliant, just limited by your assumptions. Imagine what we could achieve by combining your ordered approach with our chaos theory. Imagine what both our species could become. The diplomatic chamber fell silent as the supreme leader considered this. Around them, the probability mirror continued to show glimpses of human achievements. Ships that could fold space, medical technologies that could rewrite the laws of biology, energy systems that drew power from the quantum foam between dimensions. And if we refuse? The supreme leader asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Then we go our separate ways, Chen replied simply. We've shown you these things not as a threat, but as proof that there's more to discover about the universe than any one species can find alone. The question is, are you ready to discover it with us? A new order. One standard year after the historic first contact between humanity and the Concordiate, the space around Earth's Luna base shimmered with activity. Crystalline ships of the Concordiate fleet hung in perfect formation alongside the fluid-form vessels of humanity's Space Force, their differences highlighting the unprecedented nature of this gathering. Admiral Zextal, now serving as the Concordiate's chief ambassador to humanity, stood in the observation dome of the newly constructed Convergence Station. Beside him, Captain Chen watched as vessels from a dozen other species arrived through various forms of faster-than-light travel, each responding to the joint invitation from Earth and the Concordiate. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Chen asked, gesturing at the remarkable scene before them. The station itself was a testament to what their species could achieve together. Its crystalline framework housed quantum probability engines that shouldn't have been possible according to either species' original understanding of physics. Never, Zextal admitted, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Though I'm still trying to understand how your engineers convinced our crystals to grow in five-dimensional patterns. The same way we convinced your leadership to change their view of the galaxy, Dr. Wei replied, joining them at the window. We showed them possibilities they hadn't considered. The scientist had spent the past year working with Concordiate researchers, helping them understand how to break free from their rigid technological assumptions. Major Volkov appeared silently beside them, her cybernetic enhancements now incorporating some of the Concordiate's crystalline computing architecture. The Rathi delegation is approaching, she announced. Their sensors are already detecting the quantum irregularities around the station. They're concerned. Of course they are, Chen smiled. Just like the Concordiate was. Just like every species is when they first encounter something that doesn't fit their understanding of reality. Should we show them? Zextal nodded, activating the station's probability mirror. The assembled alien ships suddenly found themselves able to perceive reality as humanity had learned to see it. A complex web of possibilities and quantum potentials, where the boundaries between what was possible and impossible became meaningless. By the void, the Rathi ambassador's voice came through the communication channels, thick with shock. What is this? How are you doing this? That's the wrong question. Dr. Wei responded kindly. The right question is, what else might be possible if we all work together? Your species has mastered biological computing. The Concordiate excels at quantum crystallography. The Vreen understand dark energy manipulation. And humanity. We've learned to question everything we think we know. The observation dome filled with representatives from each species as they arrived at the station. Some moved on legs, others floated, and a few existed as patterns of pure energy. Yet they all shared one thing: the ability to perceive the quantum probability field that humanity had discovered. For too long, Chen addressed the gathered ambassadors. Each of our species has climbed their own technological ladder, convinced their path was the only way forward. Humanity learned the hard way that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any single perspective can comprehend. She gestured to the station around them. This facility exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously. It incorporates crystalline computing, biological processors, dark energy matrices, and technologies some of you probably consider impossible. It works because we stopped trying to force reality to match our expectations and started exploring what's actually possible when we combine our knowledge. But the laws of physics, one ambassador began, are more like guidelines, Dr. Wei interjected. One's written in a language we're only beginning to understand. Together, we've already discovered dozens of new principles that none of our species could have found alone. Zextal stepped forward, his four hearts beating in sync with the station's quantum pulse. 1 year ago, I was ordered to contain what my people saw as a threat. Instead, I discovered something far more valuable. The knowledge that everything we think we know might be wrong. And that's the most exciting possibility of all. The station's probability field fluctuated, showing the assembled representatives glimpses of potential futures. Futures where their combined technology solved problems that had plagued their civilizations for millennia. Disease, energy scarcity, the limitations of space travel, all could be overcome through cooperation and the willingness to question their most basic assumptions. We're not here to tell you what's possible, Chen concluded. We're here to invite you to help us discover new possibilities. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our adaptability. It's our endless capacity to imagine, what if? And now, we're asking all of you, what if we work together? What if we combine your crystalline certainty, your biological intuition, your energy manipulation, with our quantum imagination? What might we discover? The observation dome fell silent as the assembled species contemplated this offer. Outside, the Earth rose over luminous horizon, its blue-white surface a reminder of where humanity had begun its journey of discovery. Around it, ships of various species hung in space, their different designs representing countless approaches to understanding the universe. The choice is yours, Chen said softly. You can return to your separate paths, continue climbing your individual ladders, or you can join us in building something new. An alliance not just of species, but of ideas. Because if we've learned anything in our exploration of space, it's that the universe isn't just stranger than we imagine. It's stranger than we can imagine. Zextal completed the thought, his mandibles forming what had become his approximation of a human smile, unless we imagine together. As the assembled representatives began to discuss this unprecedented proposal, the probability field around the station pulsed with potential futures. In some, their species remained separate, each following their own path. But in others, in the brightest quantum threads of possibility, they saw glimpses of achievements that none of them could have dreamed of alone. The future was uncertain, just as humanity had always known it to be. But for the first time in galactic history, that uncertainty was seen not as a problem to be solved, but as an opportunity to be explored together.